So today we are talking about lesson planning. Lesson planning is not easy. It is definitely something that takes a while to feel like you're confident at and to really get quick at. It's not something that you just come out of college like, bam, I got this. Because there's some things that change no matter where your location is, like with your school, your situation. Um, it's not something you can do all at once, all over the course of the summer, because things will change throughout the year. And it's sometimes you need to kind of get a feel even for how your students operate, how different classes operate. So it's definitely one of those things that the experience helps you get better at it, like a lot of things. So let's talk a little bit about some lesson planning tips that can make your life easier no matter where you are in your lesson planning experience. First of all, pacing is important. So we know that students don't have, very, very long attention spans. And before, the rule used to be sort of like 1 minute per age they are old. 5 to 7 minutes is really a good time to spend on a topic. If you're playing a game, you might be able to move it a little longer, but you're not going to want to spend 20 minutes on something with a group of first graders. It's just not going to last well. The other thing here is that if you're moving to a different activity using the same song, that's still something different. You can still kind of do that if you're really needing to use that song. Just make sure you're really changing the activity. Like if you've been doing some high intensity reading with this activity, or you're making them really think, they're practicing writing, at that 5 to 7 minute mark, have them get up and try something new, like they're playing the game, or they can work with a partner and write an ostinato to go under it, something else that's involved very, very differently than how they were involved before. The other thing here with pacing is that you want to move between high intensity activities and low intensity activities. And by that, I mean, you want to move between like higher focus things. So like reading something, listening to a pattern and decoding it and writing it down. Working really hard where they're like kind of more mentally involved. And then the next activity should be sort of like low focus. They're playing a game. They might be listening to a book. It could be a movement activity, something that doesn't require them to really like super heavy duty think. And that's kind of like a good lesson planning flow to make your life easier, to help with student focus, and just to help it seem put together really well. Because whatever you do, that very most important high focus activity you want for the week with them is the first high focus activity you do. It shouldn't be like a higher focus activity later in the lesson. Something else that you want to think about with lesson planning is start small. Like if you're really in a brand new school or you're wanting to redo how you do things, don't try to do all of your grades in 1 year. It's just not going to be sustainable. So take, first grade and kindergarten. If you went and did levels this summer, if you're just kind of working on new things, pick a grade or two and say, okay, I'm totally redoing how I do these 2 grades or just this grade, instead of trying to do all 6 grades that you might be seeing. And then the year after, do the next year. And I'm not saying here that you're just kind of abandoning lesson planning for the other classes. I'm saying if you're doing like really intense overhauls or redoing how you write them, if you want to redo your curriculum and you're trying to like get them into a different sort of flow, start small. When you plan, don't plan for more than 4 to 6 weeks ahead of time. You will run into things like snow days or weather days or, field trips, things that help really throw a wrench in your schedule. If you get too far out and things get out of sync with where you are, you're going to have to rewrite those anyways, so then it becomes wasted time. Where if you're 4 to 6 weeks out and you have something that's happened, it's not a massive sort of overhaul that you'll have to do. And what I would suggest when you're planning is say, okay, on Mondays, I'm going to plan for kindergarten and first grade. Tuesdays, I'm planning second and third. Wednesdays, I'm planning 4 and 5. And then Thursdays, I'm doing all of my copying, etc., all of the things that I have to do for this. And Friday, I'm dealing with all of my special things like ensembles or concerts or things like that. So that might be a great way to be on top of your lesson planning and not feel like you're trying to do everything all in one day. If you have multi-age classrooms and you're trying to lesson plan for them, one of the best ways I've found to do this, and I've had lots of multi-age classrooms, some of them were easy, like 2 grades, and then other classes I've had like K2 with a couple preschoolers in there, or I've had like 3 to 7 in the same classroom, which anyways, rotate how you address concepts. So if say you're looking at that first grade, second grade split, you could say, okay, on year A, we're going to cover rhythm concepts for first grade and second grade and go through the entire year, and you heavily focus on rhythm along with creating and listening lessons and playing instruments, all the movement, all those other things that you'll do in the classroom. And then on year B, you say, okay, we're going to focus on the melodic concepts. And the thing that's nice about this is that you'll cover both. It just is depending if they'll get it in first grade or in second grade. And that's a really easy way to cover if you have multi-age classrooms. Something that makes your lesson planning and your life easier is batching what you do in your lessons. So as you're writing those lesson plans, especially like if you're a traveling teacher, if you're on a cart, don't plan for boom whackers followed by the class after has the Orff instruments out or needs to have everything put away because they're doing folk dancing. Try to see if you can plan your lessons so that, on week 3 of the semester, everybody's got a certain sort of activity that makes sense, especially if you're traveling or you don't have like a lot of passing time to change things over. If you're going from K to 5, or you don't want to have like those kindergartners trying to put away a bunch of things and your 5th graders are coming in. Like 5th graders can help you put things away, but K1, it's going to be really hard, especially at the beginning of the year. So try to like have lesson plans make sense where those things are out for everybody instead of trying to alternate like really big things. When you write your lesson plans, start with I can statements. So your learning objectives, whatever your school or district calls them, put those at the top of your lesson plan. Say, okay, this is the lesson that they need to be starting to practice law, and then you can find your activities to go with that. That'll help you it'll help dictate what sort of activities you're doing with the students, and it kind of gives you a good structure to work around. Concept plans are so important for your lesson planning. I really recommend writing out concept plans. They're really nice because it's basically a list, and I've talked about them a lot recently, so you can always pop back to one of my older videos and hear a little more about them. But essentially they're a list of all of the activities you have to teach a specific concept. So as you're lesson planning, have those out with you and say, okay, I want to use this one here, I want to use this practice activity, I want to use this play along, I want to use this book, this manipulative. Having those ready and at your fingertips is really an easy way to make lesson planning go a little bit faster. So that is something I would really recommend making a priority in your in your planning because it'll really help you down the road. And then a couple more things here about lesson planning, just a few like quick hits. So first of all, your pacing may have to change as you get to know your students. Some classes like fly through things, other classes have lots of questions and things take longer. There might be behavioral challenges that slow certain classes down where other classes don't have them and they're moving quickly. So you really want to you're going to need to possibly adjust some pacing things. And definitely, you know, slower pacing with your younger students in terms of how fast you're getting through concepts. And then adjust your plans as you're using them. So if you're going to keep your lesson plans from the previous year to review next year. If you run into a big, you know, snafu with something, write it down. Say, okay, this didn't work. We need to readjust it. Make those notes as things happen so that you don't have to repeat the same issues the next year. If something becomes a big hang up, you can go and say, okay, well, this didn't work this year, so we're going to try this instead. So writing those things down after the lesson, it only takes you a couple minutes, and it's really going to be something that will make your future self happier. So I hope that these lesson planning tips helped you out and kind of give you just kind of like a little, you know, refresher or something to kind of help make the process a little bit easier. If you got some good value out of this, I would love it if you left a comment or liked this video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for spending some time with me.